Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our audiences. My name is Mateo Kaba from the ACA, CEO of the ACA. And
My name is Brian Yue, CEO of the Marketing Association of South Africa, MASA.
let's introduce our speakers and welcome everybody, and thank you for the engagement and thank you for coming on board to discuss future-proofing our industry. I'm going to introduce our speakers for today. It's Boniswa Pezisa, CEO of Network BBDO, Gareth Leck. How can I forget your surname? Gareth Leck, Group CEO of Joe Public United, and Tabang Skwambane from FCB and Hello Computer Group MD. And over to you, Brian.
On the MASA side, we've got Brenda Conniff, who is a board member of the Marketing Association of South Africa. Hello, Brenda, and thanks for joining us. We've also got one of our top ace marketing practitioners in the form of Kensani Nobanda, who is Group Executive for Marketing and Corporate Affairs at Nedbank. Kensani, thank you very much for joining us. Also an ex-MASA board member from the past. And joining us now online, Sechawa Mutsielwa, who's our interim MASA CEO and also board member of the Marketing Association of South Africa. Thank you very much, panel, for joining us.
Yes, thank you. We will start with rules of engagement for our audiences. If you have a question, there's a chat room through the link that you've gained access. So just pose your questions in the chat room, and as we go along, we will take your questions and pose them to the speakers, but we're going to allow the speakers to speak for the first 30 minutes so you guys can listen and just engage your listening skills. We are going to start with Sachaba, who will lead us in the conversation, and then we will go to Boniswa, and then we'll introduce the rest of the other speakers as we go along. Sachaba, you can take the baton and make it happen.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mate and Brian. My name is Sichawa Mutsielwa. I'm a MASA board member. Yeah, I grew up and matured in this industry. It is therefore personal that I have an interest in the sustainability of our industry, because we are a special kind that have a passion for building brands. And I use the word industry loosely because as communicators, what we do cuts across all industries. Let me start with an African proverb. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. The coming weeks and months are going to demand each person to dig deep and show up for themselves, their family, their organization, their community, their industry, their country, their nation, and for humanity. Together we are stronger and powerful. We cannot afford to think in silos. We are all part of the marketing ecosystem, and we know who plays the part in our value chain. It is therefore crucial that we recognize our interdependence and interconnectedness. In the mix of our interactions, we need to find harmony between how we coordinate what we do, how to collaborate beyond our individual agendas, and how we can cooperate to serve an agenda beyond our egos. No one is sitting with all the answers, and we can't possibly have all the questions. How the energy flows will determine what we can achieve together. Issues have to take center stage, and we should trust that individually and as a group, we are working towards a common goal. The current reality of COVID-19 and the lockdown, 54 days in, has changed the context in which we all operate. It is the most adaptable that will survive. What does adaptability look like for all of us? How do we make sure that nobody's intentionally or unintentionally left behind? Another African proverb says that because we focused on the snake, we missed the scorpion. The health challenges and economic challenges have to both be looked at, and as we look at the sustainability of our industry. We need to make sure that when we make management decisions, we do not compromise what we can achieve in the short term, because the leadership decisions have to look at the long term and how we can sustain each other. That's why even in this midst, MASA, ACA, and others, continue to have ongoing discussions around industry-wide tenders and pitches, as well as what can we do to make sure that we have awards that recognize the best of us. Fragmentation dilutes our impact and leads to a lot of financial wastage. Budgets are under pressure, and we need to make sure that the money allocated to marketing and brand building efforts can go much. For me,
I think we just lost the
Okay,
Chava there.
we lost Sachaba. Audiences, please remember to mute your mics, and if you also your video. If Sorry guys, apologies for the technical problem. Can you somebody please help us with
Yeah.
connecting Chaba back?
So I guess while we wait for Sichawa to come back, we can probably go straight to Boniswa.
Yeah.
Because I think Sichawa was coming to the end of his 5 minutes anyway.
Yeah.
Shashaba back.
Yeah, we got Sichawa back. Yeah.
guess who's back?
This is just audiences, please bear in mind this is the first time we're doing this, so there will be a few technical glitches, and I hope you forgive us for the technical glitches because it's our first time doing this, but we'll get better with time. So over to you, Chaba.
I was saying that in our industry, we know quite well that creativity is driven by diversity and inclusivity because we design solutions that have relevance in the marketplace. More now than ever, we need to connect our minds with our hearts in order to keep transformation on the radar for the right reasons. Many people in the marketing value chain are faced with an uncertain future as their ability to practice their craft and earn income has been put on ice and locked away. How do we make sure that we do not lose talent to either the economic hardships or coronavirus? We need to prioritize making our workplace safe for everyone so that we can also minimize the negative financial impact. Technology like we are using today needs to be leveraged, not to abuse us, because we still need to find the pause zones, given the fact that the line between home and work has been blurred. As I come to a conclusion, let me just say this. The only constant that we have is change. At this time, we are all called to innovate and come up with solutions that perhaps we have not thought before. Let's trust ourselves as an industry that will come out of this crisis with a different mindset that is purpose fit for today's challenges. Formula One drivers have the ability to keep a very calm demeanor at 300 kilometers per hour to still make split-second decisions when there is no margin for error. We are at that point. Today, when everyone is losing their hot heads about what happened and what is happening under lockdown, it is time to pour some cold water over the brain and cool it down because the next decision and actions we are about to make are so critical, and history will judge our generation on how we come out of this. Another crisis, another day, another opportunity to show up or to be no show. I conclude with an African proverb. If you wish to move mountains tomorrow, you must start by moving stones today. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Sichawa. Quite a lot of African wisdom running through there. So let's see if Bonnie can top that out.
Before Bonnie tops it up, I just want to thank Multimedia for making this conversation possible for all of us to have. Thank you, Multimedia, for allowing us this opportunity to have the conversation as an industry. Over to Bonnie. Bonnie, are you with us? I think you're on mute, Bonnie.
Hello, good morning. Can you hear me?
How's it, Bonnie?
How's it? Sorry,
Yes.
it's a bad feedback when my speaker's on. Good morning, everybody, and thank you, MASA, and thank you, ACA. And I'm going to say thank you to COVID-19 to actually get us in one room to have this conversation.
Yes.
So thank you, everybody. I'm going to answer Sichaba's question, because Sichaba says, how do we ensure that we transform for sustainability? That's one of the questions that he asked. And in my 5 minutes, I'd like to put some provocations at the table to all of us as a collective and as a profession to say transformation shouldn't just be about race, gender, and sexual stereotypes. It should be about a bigger change, a change to the way we operate, a change because art is a symbiotic relationship. We have to coexist, we have to cooperate, we have to collaborate. And I think with the economic hardships of the last decade, we've actually forgotten that we are partners in this relationship. And therefore, contracts that are awarded to agencies, communicators, to practitioners have become much more stringent. And skepticism runs through the entire relationship. And that is about to change because now we need one another. We need each other more than we've ever needed each other. So I would like to also throw a provocation and say, can we relook the contracts that we have with one another and remove the punitive measures that we've put in our relationships and become much more mutually sustainable rather than the single entities who are always suspicious of one another. So if we are to grow and cultivate growth in the sector, in the industry, please remember that we as a sector, we are the second liners, not the front liners into the economy, but we are the second liners because we help business move. And if we are to get up and really re-kickstart the economy, we need to stop being adversarial, but become more mutually binded as partners. And really, for me, the transformation I'm asking for is a transformation of the profession, marketers and communicators, because as I said, we are the same, we are basically two different sides of the same coin. So what does that look like? If I just step back and think about brands, amazing things that we build and we work hard to get them where they are today, they are these powerful tools that help consumers and societies navigate their lives. So, and also they have the power to be beacons of life. Therefore, now it is time for us to really get into the room and recraft a new strategy, a new contract, a new binding order whereby we become partners and we begin to forge and build these incubators of creativity, of delivery, of mutual beneficiation in everything that we do. Someone is going to bring up tenders and pitches. What should those look like as we move forward? What should our deliverables and our evaluation scorecards look like? I do believe that they all need to be transformed. You know, Martin Luther said we are not where we want to be, but we sure are a long way from where we started. And today for me is a huge milestone because we were poles apart 54 days ago. And now we are in one room crafting one agenda, an agenda that's about to kickstart the economy and really to use creativity to re-kickstart the economy. Thank you.
Come in.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Bonnie, fantastic. I think that's some thought-provoking lines in there, which we will take questions from the audience at the end of the panel discussion.
Yes.
So audience, please, keep sending those questions in via the chat box, and we will open up the conversation once we are done with the panel conversation.
Yes. Okay. Who's next?
Coming up next is Gareth, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll hand over. Go ahead, Gareth.
Great. Thanks. Thank you, Mata and Brian, for giving this opportunity to share my food for thought on how we future-proof our industry and maintain its sustainability. So right now, there are a lot of unknowns and a few knowns. The first thing we know is that at this point, the future will not be the same. We also know that stopping marketing advertising during a crisis like this, based on past evidence, is not a good strategy. And thirdly, we know that we are all in this together. So the better we work together, the better we come out of this together. So given the above, to me, the question that has to be asked is, moving forward, how do agencies work better to help clients succeed? And how do clients work better to help agencies succeed? And I've actually intentionally arranged my thoughts around thinking about the things we need to do now in the crisis, but also that apply beyond the crisis. So here are some of my thoughts. So focus on the 20% that makes the 80% difference. Now is definitely the time to focus on what matters most and makes the biggest difference. With less resources at our disposal, there's literally no time or money to waste on things that give us little to no return. Secondly, saying no is much more important than saying yes right now. It's time to be brutally honest about the things we say no to that won't add value to our business. And as a natural extension of this, you should be paying particular attention to measurement of your campaigns and the performance and ROI. So adapting your strategy to say no to know what to say no to. This becomes vital in the coming months. Only invest in creativity that will make an impact. This is definitely not the time to produce some amazing campaigns, and you can do this in under 6 months. So I think it's a big learning here for us, and this is our shared responsibility. Next up is actions speak louder than words. So now is the time for brands to take action that will make a difference in people's lives. When in a crisis, consumers want to see brands that are doing things to help their customers and consumers and communities. And to not choose this crisis as an opportunity is a big mistake. If you do it right, you'll be winning hearts, minds, and market share in the short and long term. And we know that the brands that invest during a recession recover a lot faster than the ones that don't. Next up is efficiency, and rethinking how we operate is going to be key moving forward. So I think we all have to ask ourselves why it takes 6 months to get a strategy approved. We have to ask ourselves why it takes 10 rounds of approvals before we get creative out to market. We have to ask ourselves, what is the point of having processes in place that do not serve their primary purpose of getting great product to market on time? So no fingers being pointed, because I think the responsibility sits with both agencies and clients for improvements here. And I think to Boniswa's point, it's time to relook client and agency contracts. So I believe our contracts should be co-created and equally aligned to client and agency goals. And surely they should be the same. We should all be striving to produce more impactful creative work. We should all be striving to do it efficiently as possible. And as an end result of this, we should be striving to achieve the required levels of ROI. Our contracts should be done in a way that hold us equally accountable to achieve these outcomes. And we are actually busy piloting some of these contracts right now as an agency. Next up is, what is your business purpose and what are you doing to deliver on it? So your true north will help you guide a lot of your decisions in these current choppy seas and the ones to follow, because we don't know how long it's going to last. I believe that companies that are not clear on why they exist and how they can serve their customers and communities better going forward are quickly going to be shown up in these times of crisis and in the future. And my last point is, the transformation of our industry is the future of our industry. So truly South African work that connects and engages with the broader South African community can only be created by marketing departments and agencies that are truly and authentically transformed, and by ones that are transformed across all levels of its organization. With this simple logic in place, it's an absolute imperative that we are represented in proportion to the South African demographic. And if we don't achieve this goal, there will be no future for our industry. So to conclude, if we can move our entire organizations out of a building in a week and still remain highly functional, why is it not possible to quickly re-engineer how we think and operate and become a healthier, more sustainable industry? And you might say it's a matter of life and death that got us to all work so quickly, but you could also argue that we are talking about the life and death of our industry in the long term. So thank you for my food for thought, and hopefully it gave me something to chew on.
Okay. Thank you, Gareth. Gareth touches on quite pertinent points.
Absolutely.
Business with purpose, transformation, what it looks like and
Yep.
what it should look like in
Yep.
the future. And whose responsibility is transformation? Is it black, white, female? Whose responsibility is it? But we'll move right along. And I think it's Brenda's turn.
Yeah.
Brenda, you want to pick up?
Thank you. Can you hear me? Great. Hi, everybody. It's really great to get together, even if it's not in a really touchy-feely way. And just to underscore the strangeness of our times, this has nothing to do with the topic, but I thought I'd share with you a WhatsApp I got this morning, which says cannabis is legal, haircuts are not. It took 50 years, but the hippies have finally won. So We definitely are in strange times. I wrote an article for Biz Community 2 weeks ago, saying that it has never ever before been so important for marketing to take the leadership in their organization.
Yeah.
That is the only thing which is actually going to make sure that organizations will survive. Yes, we've got to be conscious of the financial difficulties. Yes, we've got to be conscious of the new constraints in the supply chain. But it is only the marketers who can actually lead the organization, get them in communication with their consumers, and make sure that brands will survive. Because what we do now really is going to be critical for the future success of our brands. Jason, I hope you have my first slide up there. If you can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, next slide after that. The point that I wanted to make, though, is that this is, and it echoes what Benita has been saying, and what Gareth was saying too, the marketers cannot do this alone. This is honestly where the agency and the marketing organization needs to work in complete synchronization and in a spirit of partnership, because that's the only way it's going to make it work. Businesses are seriously in trouble. If you look at this slide that I have up on the screen right now, this is a recent, I think it was towards the end of April, McKinsey did this survey in South Africa, which actually shows you that about 75% of consumers, it's that second bottom line, 75% of consumers actually say that they are cutting back on their spending. They are not spending as normal. I was chatting to a Unilever colleague the other day, and she was saying that products like hair shampoos and deodorants are seriously down. And she was saying, what is it? We not care what we smell like or look like when we're in lockdown at home. That businesses are facing serious revenue declines. Next slide, thanks, Jason. So really, honestly, now is the time for brands to have a conversation with consumers. Yeah. I'm astonished to see how many brands have actually gone silent. And I wonder whether they don't understand that in this time where consumers are confused, they're uncertain, they have lots of fears, we need to have that constant relationship with the brand. And for brands to be silent at this time is actually to break the relationship with the consumer. And that is, of course, where your brand value lies, because if there's one thing that will future-proof the marketing industry is to make sure that we sustain our brand value, because that is actually what brand loyalty is all about. And we therefore have to maintain that brand relationship. It has really never been more critical. However, when I do see advertising and I look at the tone of voice that is being used, people are missing it like crazy, because people don't want you right now to just be saying to them, go out and buy your hair shampoo, go out and buy your deodorant. It's the wrong tone of voice. Consumers need to feel like we're actually understanding them at this point in time. And I really admire a campaign. Kenzie will talk later about her Nedbank campaign, but I'll ask Jason, if you're able to, Jason, just play the Sunlum ad, which they brought together and put together in a matter of weeks, and it was on air in the right tone of voice. Jason, are you able to play? is really important in this time for consumers. And I think they have actually caught the tone of voice and the relationship with the consumer, which will sustain them long past lockdown is actually over. So, in fact, it's never been easier for us to actually have a conversation with consumers. If you look at the same McKinsey survey, which asks the question of how consumer habits are changing, the two things that really stand out, number one, is that traditional media is right back into its own right. Consumers are spending more time in front of the television and also even on radio. Radio is such a personal medium. You can get right into the consumer's lounge or bedroom with your radio adverts. So traditional media has definitely increased and listenership and viewership is back up again. So great medium. But of course, it's no surprise to see that online and social media is up by 48%. So, wow, what an opportunity where we can actually react really fast. We can get online campaigns together very quickly. They're not that expensive to do. We should all be looking and partnering with our agencies to make sure that we keep that brand relationship going. Last slide, please. So the issue, therefore, for me is if we want to future-proof our entire industry, I don't just mean as us as marketers and advertisers, I mean as the South African industry, we really need to take the leadership, and I mean marketers and agencies need to take the leadership to prepare now for what is next. And I really do believe, like Gareth, I think you said, that coronavirus does actually bring an opportunity for innovation, for forward thinking, for future proofing, and making those contingency plans that we never would have thought of as individuals and organizations without this disruption that really got us all going. So really, we need that creativity. We need that innovation from everybody listening. And I believe that not only will we get through the lockdown successfully, but we can actually look to a really great economic future. Thanks, everybody. Not so long.
The interesting thing for me, Mate, is effectively marketing 101.
Yeah.
But I
Go
think
back to
somewhere
base.
along the way, we've lost our way.
Yeah.
And here comes COVID,
Yeah. To rejig us and
crisis,
re-energize us.
re-energize, bring it back together.
Yeah.
And here we are today at Multimedia in Randburg with our panel sitting all over the, sort of South Africa, the future of how things are going to be done. A
Yeah.
virtual studio and a panel that is remotely working. So Multimedia, thank you very much once again for setting this up for us. Next up,
Next up is our hashtag before we go anywhere. Hashtag ACA Cares COVID-19. For anybody who's listening, who's a social media consumer, please hashtag ACA Cares COVID-19. Next up, after Brenda, we are going to Tabang Shkwamane, who can lead us into the next area of our discussion.
Hello, everybody. Firstly, thanks very much for inviting me to chat, and thank you to our esteemed colleagues, and then the ACA and MASA as well, and welcome to everyone who are watching us, hopefully safe at home behind closed doors. So I've chosen to drop the proofing part of this statement. I think it's so difficult to predict the future as we always thought. No one in their right minds would have ever imagined that an airborne pathogen would have affected our lives in 2020 like that. But 2019 was a horrible year, and we all thought 2020, and of course, what happened? The airborne pathogen that no one could have imagined, a novel coronavirus called COVID-19, suddenly became a reality, and our world was never the same again. So the way forward is not a certainty, and predictions are flawed. What we do know is that we will face exposure to this airborne pathogen, and we will be infected. We know that our livelihoods will be under threat, and what we do know is that this world, and in particular South Africa and the African continent, will never be the same again. So as South Africans have finally woken up, we have finally woken up to the realities of socioeconomic disparity, exclusive growth, and the risks that they pose to both our privilege and the selective opportunity that we engender and entrench. We claim a meritocracy, but we ensure we have limited competition through class, race, and gender exclusion. Most of us will get through this without an issue, but we'll also never see the world and our place in it as the same as we have before. If you do, however, you should not be in this industry as a communicator, because then you definitely do not know how to connect.
And that is just my opinion. What I'm doing is I'm going to suggest 3 levels of change to build a more robust creative marketing and communication industry partnership. I'm going to focus on access as an inclusive practice, liquidity in terms of, simply put, let Peter pay Johanna, to pay Metsi, to pay Simpiwe, to pay Peter again, and that mechanism continues. And finally, respect and trust. So to start off with access, I just wanted to talk about it. Access is about inclusiveness. And inclusiveness is built on a willingness to provide opportunities to a wider group of people. They will decide how to take those opportunities, and as a result, the best of a larger group will emerge. This is the hardest thing to do because those with more will appear to be better than those with less. But inclusiveness is also about establishing the playing fields and the advantages of some versus others, which leads to enablement. Because from such broader the belief and understanding of enabling those who have less in order to ensure that the playing fields and where the greatest talent and potential lies is evident despite their differences. The example I'd use is Sia Khaleesi. He was included above in terms of an opportunity, but there were severe gaps in privilege. But he was enabled by certain people, even though it didn't make up for the gaps. And the result was what? A World Cup winning captain and an inspirational human being, and a person that you look at and go, now that is when you create an inclusive environment, how good we could be. And finally, it's about faith. Faith is the belief that doing the above, as in doing what inclusiveness and enablement will result in, will lead to the results because we have faith in each other, that it is in our nature to want to succeed. Some more than others, but certainly those who want to succeed the most will choose to do so. I then want to move into a space of liquidity, and again I'm shifting across to a very different set of scenarios, a set of requirements here. Liquidity ultimately is about the economics of our country, and what we need in South Africa to sustain business is liquidity in the markets. I'm not going to go into an economics lecture about business, but the truth is businesses need cash to pay salaries and keep the lights on. Yeah. They need money to pay their suppliers to keep supplying their clients. And we're at the risk, at severe risk at the moment of a liquidity crunch. In our industry, as the advertising and communication industry, our liquidity situation is actually at a severe crisis point. Our marginal businesses are under pressure. And of course, because we don't have lines of credit, we're unable to sustain our businesses. And you'll see more and more of our businesses starting to fold, especially considering the immense pressure that the current contracts we operate in have put us in the first place. So my esteemed colleagues as well have mentioned this. We need to reframe our contracting process with each other. The marketers and their procurement partners and ourselves need to sit in a room. I'm not going to continue with that one because I think I covered it perfectly well. What I do want to come to is this concept of payment terms, the bugbear of all businesses. If you want to kill the cash flow in a business, let's do payment terms. And I'm talking a big business now because big business is putting pressure on the small guys to do payment 120, 150 days. This is unacceptable in the current environment, and we need to change those payment terms with immediate effect in order to provide liquidity and establish the lines of credit we need from the banks in order to keep our business going. The other one I want to mention is then the more for less and faster than ever before. There's this concept that was introduced. Again, the more procurement people come into the room, and there are good ones and there are bad ones. Let me tell you, the good ones are the ones that see us as human beings and engage us like human beings and appropriately. But then there are those that you set on us like dogs, barking at some sort of criminal on your property, and they come after us to cut down as much as they can from us. And what happens then is we have to juniorize our business, make more stuff for you, and then you are less pleased because more junior staff are being employed to make rather than create, and worldly experience in doing things well has been compromised. Sitaba used an African proverb that defines this succinctly. He said, going fast and going far, which one do you want? And at the end of the day, it's a trade-off. If you want to go fast, if you want more, and you want to, then remember, you go alone. You don't take us with you, and we'll give you what you need, but you won't have the kind of creativity that actually really needs to cut through at a time like now. And I think both Brenda and Gareth said that as well, in terms of it is time to connect and communicate. But when you connect, you have to have the creativity that allows you to connect. We're constantly trying to meet unreasonable demands to do more, faster, and more accurately. And we cannot afford to do work that just doesn't get noticed. Finally, I want to talk about rates. Rates are about humanity, and you need to look at us as humans again. I ask that all people in our space and in our industry start looking at each other as humans again and recognizing that our skill has value. Respect that value, and we will be able to pay our staff in a way that gives them the sense of comfort and convenience and confidence that their skill and their input into this industry is also valued. And I guarantee you the work. And when I say the work will get better, it will be because people believe in themselves just as much as they believe in the work that's out there. Understand that our industry is about creativity, and creativity is art. And art is always criticized and judged. And they wake up every morning to be judged. And judged by you, judged by us internally, and judged by the world out there who gets to see the work. And they have to deal with that judgment constantly. And without the confidence of just being rewarded enough, remunerated enough to say, you are valuable, they cannot do that work, and they break down. And we have a mental health issue in our industry. And if you our industry, let me tell you, we need to start dealing with mental health issues, because that judgment leads to depression, and that depression leads to people breaking down and destroying themselves. And finally, I want to talk about respect and trust in the form of collaboration. What we want from you is to invest in the future. If you invest in your creative branding, comms, and even your media partners and suppliers, then you'll reap the rewards of deep commitment, improved in both quality and quantity, in particular in innovation for your business. We're asking for respect, like I said before, but respect us for what we can do, and we will be you in ways that you'll never have imagined. By respecting your partners in a room, and this takes me to the next point about sharing openly. The only way to share openly is to respect each other. And what we find is we with more to work, but it can only be better to work with between each other. Not sharing budgets until after the work is done. Not sharing data leads to misalignment. Not sharing critical business information that seems tangential, but is critical to the information that we need to really find that nugget of creativity that connects the consumer with who you really are. And I'm so glad we talked about the North Star. Knowing where we need to go is just the beginning. Knowing how to get there is about finding ways of understanding each other so deeply that we've given up on our personal egos, as has been mentioned before. And what that allows us to do is finally to collaborate in a way that creates the most incredible work, the work that really connects and communicates with people and takes the brand and puts them into people's hearts and their minds, both the emotional and the rational and the functional. So I can only summarize that my suggestions will not future-proof our industry. At least I can't claim that it will. But what I will say is that if you truly adopt some of our suggestions, and not just mine, all of our suggestions, we have a real chance of making through this incredibly challenging time. And I beg and beseech all of you to reconsider how you've approached your relationships, both to your clients as part of our industry, as well as from our clients to ourselves throughout the communication industry. It's not the time for us to fight each other about the rands and cents, but to fight for each other to actually lead this country into a new version of economic prosperity. So thanks everybody, and thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Sorry, Viva Thabang. Viva Thabang. Thabang has said quite a mouthful. And strangely enough, when we started this process with Brian and Sechaba, we spoke about some of the issues that you have brought to the forefront. And I hope we are going to be able to drill deeper into them. And also the audience is going to be able to engage us on some of the issues that you brought up. But thank you. Thank you
very much, Thabang.
Yeah.
I think for me, Mate, the point here is this is the start of many dialogues.
Yes.
So in as much as we will drill down into the issues of today, if I unpack a lot of what Thabang said, there is quite a lot there that talks about the future, sort of the medium to long term. Short term for me, I think, his plea is very simple. Guys, loosen up the purse strings. In order for this industry to survive now, we need to get some cash flow back into the industry. And on that note, why not bring in one of the biggest players in the industry?
Yes, Nedbank.
Group Executive for Marketing and Corporate Affairs at Nedbank, Kensani Nowanda, thank you very much for joining us. Would you like to round off on Thabang's sort of discussion and your thoughts and views about how we take this forward?
Thanks, Brian. I have to say that impassionate plea from Thabang. As a marketer, I'm listening to that, and I'm actually thinking, I hope none of my agencies are listening. And then I remember, bloody hell, Gareth Lake is on this call. So I think I actually wanted to be a bit more practical in this conversation today and just maybe give you guys a sense of some of the things we've been going through as marketeers. So obviously, everyone has mentioned that COVID-19 has impacted work and business, and obviously from a marketing perspective. But I wanted to address sort of three key things from a Nedbank perspective that we've been going through, and I'm hoping that it helps to take the conversation forward around how do we work better with our agencies. So let's start with marketing budgets. You can imagine that the first conversation that happens when this thing hits and businesses start to look at from a bottom line perspective, we're not going to achieve the earnings that we thought we would achieve. The first conversation that happens is let's cut the marketing budget. And actually from a Nedbank perspective, how we decided or how I decided to manage that is our CFO came and said, 30% cut on your marketing budget, here we go. I then said, now wait a minute. So having learned everything that we learned from 2008 around as a brand, you need to market, you need to still, have your brand say something during this crisis, referring to a lot of what Brenda spoke to. We then did a bottom-up exercise that said, we will give money back, but it can't be at the expense of our brand sort of awareness and what we're trying to say in our North Star. Unfortunately, we actually got to a point between me and the CFO where we actually agreed on what that marketing budget cut would be. So I think as a first point, going back to what Brenda was saying in terms of we need to lead that conversation, because if we don't, definitely CFOs and CEOs are going to cut our marketing budgets without making us lead that conversation, right? So I think that was important. Unfortunately, we still did take a budget cut, and that's got an impact on the value chain. So to a lot of what Thabang was speaking about, and that's just live, it is what it is. What I do appreciate though, is it's important that agencies and brand marketeers then have a real conversation about, here's what our budget cut is, here's what it means, how do we still do interesting work, make sure that you still get paid in the context of the budget cut that we have. And I have to actually applaud, my big agency, Joe Public. So Gareth actually called me and said, I completely understand that there's, you guys are probably under a lot of pressure. How can we help? How can we come to the party? And we had a really good discussion about, from a money perspective, given our budget cut, how they would come to the party. And I think that's important, because what it means is when the times are great, I will always remember that I had an agency that honestly didn't complain and say, well, you can't cut our retainer, you can't cut, but an agency that looked at itself as my business partner. And that's important for the long term, right? Because then I know that it's not just an agency who's there only for the good times. So I think that's the one thing I wanted to talk to. The second thing I wanted to talk to from a practical perspective, this idea of continuing to actually support your brand during this time. And I'll ask the guys to play one of our ads. So, and maybe just before the ad plays, let me just give you a bit of background on how we got here. So we were right in the middle of planning for our big retail and brand campaign for the year. We actually, I think on the Friday, we were meant to be having our first pre-production with our director. This thing hits, and we're like, firstly, there's no way we're going to be able to do a big production. And, we're having all these conversations. Then we thought, actually, if you think of what our brand stands for, which is to use our money expertise to do good, it's never more pertinent than right now. So it is important that we have something to say. But what we were going to say, probably not that relevant anymore. So how do we change the tact of how we say that? So we basically unmasked a guy called Sbu, who's on our retail TV ads. And he basically started talking about himself to say, actually, my name is Max and I'm an actor. And this time is tough right now. And real conversations that if you look at how they've landed, people have really appreciated the authenticity, but still very much talking about in this period, how do you continue to manage your money habits? So it's important as brands that just because there's a crisis in this, your North Star must remain the same, and use the opportunity to talk about what is the most relevant for your brand and who you are. By the way, just as a data point, we always look at, sort of from a awareness perspective, are we getting our awareness from paid, owned, or earned media? What's been interesting for us as a Nedbank brand in the last couple of weeks is most of our awareness has actually come from our owned media channels. So social media has become exceedingly important in this period and what we've been saying there, as well as earned media, so PR. And I guess because we're a bank as well, and we've had to play quite a big role in terms of payment holidays, all of those discussions, we have gotten a lot of, earned media. And we've also been tracking our sentiment. And I'm really proud that, as a Nedbank brand, we've had most positive sentiment across all the banking brands, given what we've been doing the last couple of weeks. So we haven't lost the essence of what we're trying to do in our North Star, and the results are showing. And if you look at our brand awareness as well, it still continues, to be at the same levels as it was before COVID-19. So as marketeers, those are important things, because the last thing you want is to almost start from scratch when the crisis is done, right? You need to make sure that, you've got a certain level of management through the crisis. So even just to create those campaigns, it's going to be interesting for our agencies right after this, because basically the way we created the campaign is Max, he basically films himself at home on his iPhone. He sends it through, the guys work on production. I mean, we've literally been able to turn around ads in 3 days, whereas normally these things take us 2 to 3 months. So my expectation coming out of this when I talk to my agencies now is, okay, so I want agile, I want quick, because clearly we can do it. And so that's been interesting for me to actually really challenge ourselves to say, actually, we can move things a lot quicker than we do. It's not that complicated, guys. It's advertising, you know what I mean, right? So I'll be putting, a lot of challenges back to our agencies to say, how do we continue to work that quickly? And then and I'll actually ask the guys to play the ad at the end, which is the first Max ad that we did. I think in conclusion, for me, the other thing that I want to bring up, which I don't I think maybe Sichaba touched on it or Boniswa at the beginning, is around pitches. So again, another practical example for us. We've got our sort of brand CI business pitch out, and COVID-19 hit. So we had to think about, okay, so what does this mean from a pitch process perspective? So we had a short list of 5 agencies. We actually had a meeting with them, I think beginning of this week or last week, to say, so, okay, how are we going to do this? And actually, we're collaborating with the agencies to say, how are we going to pitch in an environment like this? And we're not the ones saying, here's how it's going to happen. And they've come back to us and said, could you please reduce the pitch brief? We're not going to be able to deliver this and that, which has been great, because then all of a sudden we come out with a brief that they're comfortable with, we are comfortable with, because it still needs to speak to, what we're trying to do from a brand perspective. So the collaboration thing, I think that Tabang was speaking about, is so important in a moment like this. It doesn't mean business stops. We still need to pitch, and stuff, but we're doing it in a way that's much more collaborative and all of that. So yeah, I think for me, I wanted to just give a sense around some of the really practical things that we've had to deal with as marketeers. and how as a Nedbank brand, we've chosen to show up during this period. And then I'll just ask if we can just show the ad as my final thing. Thanks.
Jason?
Eta, it's me, Smoother Cab Driver. Actually, it's not. My name is Max and I'm an actor. And like you, I'm staying home right now, so I'm not earning the same income, making the future really uncertain. You know how they say it takes 21 days to form a new habit? So maybe we use this time to take a different look at our money, and hopefully we come out of this as ministers of our own finances. Let's change our habits together.
Okay. Thank you, Kenzie.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kenzie. You touched on some pertinent points. And I think for us as an industry, as the advertising industry, tenders and pitches are very crucial. And it's a conversation that we need to have in terms of what does the future look like when we engage in tenders and pitches. But for our audiences, we're ready to take your questions. I've picked up a few that we can already start engaging on. And some of them are just comments, but I think it's comments that we can talk about. I'm going to assume it's a gentleman, Luke at Kabuki. And I'm going to pose, budgets are going to be a problem, but the solution will be found. I generate respectful relationships. That's a comment that he made. I've just posted it so for you guys to see. I don't know if you can pick up on any other questions there. Brian?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's the same. Luke, has asked quite a lot of all the questions I've posted. So Luke is one of our technical team, and he's working the YouTube channel where some people are viewing from. And the technical setup of this is such that on YouTube, you can't interact with us. So that's fantastic.
Thank you, Luke.
Luke, thank you very much. So those are questions. So I think you could pose that to, the panel or one of the panel members.
Okay, let me ask another one, which I picked up very quickly. Is it not better to start sharing the opportunities with agencies that have in the past been excluded from these opportunities? So smaller agencies, how do we engage smaller agencies to become part of the bigger value chain? So that's another question by Luke. So I don't know if somebody would like to take this, any of the marketers? The inclusion of smaller agencies.
I'm very happy to take this. So, and this is actually pre-COVID-19. We've been very clear as a brand that whilst we've got our sort of key, do have to play a role in transformation and bringing in smaller agencies on board. So we actually have brought in 3 smaller Black-owned agencies and we've committed a certain amount of business for every year with those agencies to ensure that one, we're doing our bit to drive transformation. Obviously, they grow as agencies and hopefully get a bigger piece of the pie. For me, it's a journey that we started last year, and it's important that we continue with it because I think the biggest impact for COVID-19 is going to be on the small agencies. So that commitment that we made actually to them in terms of how much business they would get, we are still committed to it even through this crisis to make sure that they get through it and their businesses survive.
Mate, can I also answer that question? Because I think it's not only a client responsibility. And I'm going to throw it out as a member of the ACA to say, us as ACA members, where we can really help smaller agencies is with processes and so that they don't invest too much. If we all contributed X percentage of process and assistance to smaller agencies, it helps their delivery to clients far better and much quicker and easier.
Brian, may I just make a point to the person who made that very first comment? It was more a comment than a question, and yes. I think that the issue is that, as Tabang says, it is a really tough time for agencies at the moment in terms of cash flow and liquidity. I think some of the marketers have made the point, and I was making the point as well, it is just as tough for business organizations at present too, particularly some which are worse affected than others through the lockdown. So this point of cost efficiency, I think, is going to become really an issue of the day. And we need speed and agility at the moment to get our communication right and in tone with what consumers need to hear. But I actually think that, in my experience, a lot of the cost inefficiency happens when we take 6 months to create a campaign. So I think we need to really have a look at the way in which we work together to make sure that we can actually turn campaigns around within a matter of weeks, so that we don't have these inefficiencies and time delays that I've certainly experienced.
Absolutely perfect, Brenda. And I think, this is one of the unintended consequences of COVID-19. But, the bugbear is not only on agencies, it's the entire ecosystem around, so it's client and agency. And some of the issues raised around sort of client sharing, decision-making, same thing on the agency side. So it's going to be an interesting sort of, future. But I think we're all up for it in the sense we've learned and we know we need to survive.
Okay. Anybody else want to make a comment?
Maybe I can just jump in. I can just jump in. Look, I think and it's a tricky one because the old revenue model used to be commission based, and then it got pushed into hour based. And the problem with an hour based commission, you actually incentivize to take more time in a strange way. So we, and everybody's bought into a system, so it's become a systematic problem. So now you've geared your entire business around these processes, but now how do you reverse it? So we actually are busy applying our minds where we can actually incentivize our clients to pay us less, we can get the campaigns out quicker, because we also believe the work's going to be better if there's actually a level of more trust between an agency and a client. So, and we're obviously trying to figure out what are those structures of how you do this, and you incentivize that, because you incentivize positive behavior both from the agency and from the client, and you get efficiency. That it becomes a triple win. And we also know if we can do that, we can redeploy our resources into other areas and actually do better work on our other clients. So this is you could say crisis equals creativity. And I suppose, that's the things we need to figure out. And we, as I said, we're looking at our contracts, we're having these kind of conversations, but we're going to have to do it. It's systematic. It's deep and systematic. So, but maybe now we start questioning it.
Just as a suggestion, Gareth, the old commission system didn't really work for marketers because you were paying a fee irrespective of delivery or time and hours delivered. But I respect what you're saying about an hourly rate as well, which doesn't really incentivize the right behavior. So perhaps we should all be thinking more about output-based incentives.
Yeah, correct. Correct.
Which would encourage speed, actually.
Exactly.
Through the chair.
Coming in, and because this is a two-way engagement, let's hear from there's Joey Kuvutlu.
Yep.
For Kensi Nobanda. We have learned a lot from this time. Case in point is the example you gave about being able to deliver more efficiently. Will you be expecting to pay agencies less? And this is a question for Kensi.
I don't know if it's necessarily less versus differently. So I think the conversation around, for example, an output-based model resonates for me because, I'm paying for actual product, right? Versus the value chain of the product and stuff. So yeah, I can't say it's necessarily less. It's more just differently.
Can Can I ask a question to Kenzie then? At the, so this is an interesting one because I'm sorry to make it your problem to answer, Kensani, but what we find is a lot of the marketers will say what you're saying, but then will go back with their procurement teams and do the complete opposite. So they'll say, oh, we're all about this thing. And then ultimately, when it comes down to contracting, it's back to the same old hourly based rates, et cetera, versus a genuine intent to actually shift into an output based system. What are the steps? Because I loved how you were, I was a little bit emotional. You were very practical. How would you go about doing that? And what are you going to do? And what can you say when we come out of this to say, I've done these things?
So I actually am quite clear that procurement does not own the relationship or the conversation from a money perspective with our agencies. That's owned by me as the person who runs marketing at Nedbank. Ultimately, what procurement they should make sure that I'm getting, good value, like, all of those good things and stuff. But those decisions are actually my decisions. And I think as marketeers, we've handed them over to procurement for no reason at all. Those are we should be managing and driving that, and procurement must deliver to what I require. I really hope the agencies who work with us do get that sense. I mean, we had, and I'm not going to mention which agency, but we had a very tough discussion last year with one of our agencies. And I say tough on the procurement side because they were talking more around, here's average costs of the industry. We're paying a premium and you want the premium to go down. And I said, I'm going to pay a premium if the output is fantastic. That's what, and I told procurement that we own that conversation. I think as marketeers, we've handed it over to procurement. For me, my procurement is very clear. They need to deliver to the objectives and expectations that I have with our marketing team at Nedbank.
Oh, thank you. Let all people in marketing remind their procurement people for that very same reason. Thank you.
From Charlene James, fast versus unrealistic, Kenzie. I certainly think we can be more agile, but to expect a TV ads in 3 days as a norm will kill agencies, especially the smaller agencies.
I think what I'm saying is it's that the agency has proven to me that we can move quickly. Actually, let me not say we, because part of the thing is around our approval processes as well, right? So my expectation of 3-4 months is not there. I honestly, I think our agencies need to understand that it's just no longer there, to be honest. Maybe 3 days is too much, but I don't know. It's actually just how it is. It's been proven we can do it. And I think we need to start thinking like that. And maybe let me actually just make a simple example. When I look at, as a bank, right? We now have this NWOW and agile way of working to launch new products and services. So we can literally get out an app, thing in 3 months. And that's an actual tech thing that we deliver because of how we're working from an agile NWOW perspective. Why can't we do that as marketeers, as agencies? And actually, for me, what this process and what COVID-19 should be challenging us is how do we get more agile? How do we get, you know what I mean? I can't see us going back to those long months, Yeah.
Hold on, can we give Bonnie a chance and then Brenda, then Tabang?
I think what COVID-19 has taught us, if we were all sitting in a boardroom talking about South Africa working from home for 2 months and longer, we would all say it would not happen. So a tragedy like this has actually pushed us to think differently, to do things differently, and to operate differently. And so what we need new ways of working. And I agree, we can't turn it a quality, because the issue is about quality. TV ad in 3 days or whatever the period is. But we can certainly, if our ways of working and the agreement that we form, this new pact, is about understanding the right amount of resources required to deliver quality work at a given time. That will actually get us to a next level. Because, as Gareth said, being paid on an hourly basis The longer we take, the more we get paid, because the measures that we had were quite punitive in a funny way. Now we need to reset, go back. We're at zero base now. Let's reset, let's review contracts, let's review ways of working, let's re-engage and really look at the brand and say, what does
Yes, I do.
Maybe I can just jump in.
Yeah, if I can just come in there.
Can we just allow the order? Gareth will let Brenda speak, and then it will be Tabang, and then you can engage after Tabang. And then Chaba, and then
Gareth.
Yeah.
I really think that we have to emphasize this issue of partnership, because to me, the conversation is going a little bit us and you at the moment. So we really need to talk about this solution in partnership. And I wanted to just take a point of agility that was mentioned also into the cost space. And if I can just contrast the two ads we've seen this morning, where the Sanlam ad, I'm pretty good at estimating TV production costs. The Sanlam ad must have cost in excess of 2 million, with the number of artists, the number of different locations. That was an expensive ad. Whereas the Max campaign was not only delivered fast, but that production cost is single artist, single location, and not an expensive production. So that's a way, for me, where you can actually get really efficient communication fast and at an agile low cost, which really helps clients to be able to also come to the party in terms of how much do we have available to pay the agency and how much do we have available to put behind media.
I think answers that. Brenda raises an interesting point vis-a-vis Sanlam versus Nedbank. There's been a couple of questions on here, Mate, about let us all not forget all the other role players within the industry. So we're sitting in a lovely studio in Midrand right now with about 40 technical people here.
Yeah.
So if we carry on producing adverts with iPhones, what happens to these lovely people here? So, so Tabang, in answering or in sort of adding to that conversation from Brenda, what does the future look like vis-a-vis client, agency, and all the other myriad suppliers in between?
Yeah.
I think firstly, I'm glad you brought that up. There's a couple of things about and please, this is with all due respect to my esteemed colleagues on the panel as well. We often using words as cliches, and they become cliches. So agile has become a cliche. It is not a cliche. It's actually a hard-working action inside of a development process. It's actually an attitude. It comes with values, it comes with principles, and those values and principles take time to adopt. I'm glad Brenda said partnership. I'm glad that Kansani talked about adopting new processes, but adopting new processes is not assumed by everyone, and so it does require inside of that partnership deep alignment, and that's why the principles and the values of agility are important. The verticals that deliver the product in our space, the communication product, is fairly deep. It starts with a brief in the client space, and that was predicated on a business strategy, and that goes all the way through the business into the agency, and from the agency through to all of our partners, and or to all the agencies, because sometimes these are big jobs with multiple agencies involved, disciplines. And so I think that what has happened is when you're time-based, like we are, we also are fighting for hours. And so understand collaboration is threatened in the process of approaches, and also sometimes multidisciplinary approaches as well in the vertical. So what I'm going to say is that it is also an appeal to agencies at the same time for us to stop looking at what dollar we can generate ourselves, but look to share within the vertical. I think it's an important responsibility we have, if you're the lead agency, but more importantly, if you're any of the agencies inside of that vertical, to understand that we're all trying to achieve the same result. I don't think agility is something that will be achieved anytime soon, because I actually think, to be very honest, part of the problem with agility, or working agile, should I say, as a process, is not set up correctly, both by the client and then the agency partnerships, across all the agency partnerships, in the way that it needs to be delivered. So we have to be very careful not to use cliches, but it is important to look deeper into our own processes and enforce those processes with transparency. I'm going to say this to the marketers out there. Very often what happens is what's called the agency problem, and not our agency problem, but the agency problem within your own business, where middle managers represent you in terms of execution of your briefs that you wish to be delivered on. Those middle managers are afraid of the result of getting it wrong. They will go for mediocre rather than exceptional. And it's you who are responsible as marketers to drive the process of exceptional work within your own teams, and enable them inside yourselves to deliver work that is better than ever and that cuts through the clutter. What we're faced with as agencies is this conundrum of working with middle managers who ultimately are either not as skilled as yourselves, or do not have a better an understanding of the tone, the language, or the tonality of what needs to come through, or what even great creative work looks like. And that's where we find ourselves in a great challenge. I ask that everyone looks at themselves and goes, we all have a role to play as agencies. We, especially the big agencies, we have a role to play to be more inclusive of our partners in other disciplines, as well as partners in the vertical. As marketers, we have to look at own people in our own teams, and how we can enable them and empower them to make great decisions that make us better as a collective. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great stuff, Thabang. Who were we going next to? Was it?
No, we're done with the panelists. We're just now going through.
Oh, okay.
Oh, next was Sechaba.
Sechaba wanted to make a comment, and then Gareth as well.
Sechaba, then Gareth.
Yeah, I wanted to make a point. I want to make a point that let's remember that the purpose of this conversation is to make sure that we break the silos and we integrate what we do. Perhaps we also need to remember that the context that we are talking about has changed everything. And to rely on what has worked, what used to work might not serve us. We're all learning, even the guys that are managing us to go through the pandemic, the science is emerging. So even how we work is gonna be emerging. So we need to be both flexible and adaptable in the discussions that we have, that we don't have anything to be put in concrete. There needs to be alignment as a principle also, that we need to be aligned around what is it that we are trying to do. If we are building brands which build businesses, and we serve the same agenda, and that alignment is important. And then the second last point is around engagement. Our ability to engage at all levels. It is a shame if we're not able to hold relationships right from the brand manager all the way to the chief marketing officer, and we rely on the middle crowd. That is not a client's problem. It is an industry problem if they are not able to maintain and build relationships right across. If we can then, as we go forward, seeing the importance of it, Thabang, that we need to have relationships with all the stakeholders to make sure that we go through. Some of us in the last 20 years were groomed by the best agency people, so that when we sit on the other side, we are able to engage and speak the same language. So that coaching, mentoring, and understanding that we are in it together, it's not just the client that will dictate what needs to happen, becomes quite an important principle. That's why I said in my beginning, if you operate in a coordinated environment, there's always a high priest, the one in the high horse, the one that gives direction that everybody goes to. Agencies need not rely on that one in the high horse. In a collaborative space, people serve their own agendas, where I really think we need to be in a cooperative space where we serve the agenda and not everything else is in the center. For small agencies, small does not necessarily mean you are excused from producing good work under the same time pressures. It will be remiss of us to give you that as an excuse, so that in the end, then we say, well, it's a small agency, look at the quality of work, given the resourcing that they needed to have, because we all have to serve the work, and it becomes quite important. Acknowledging also that there's this intermediation, meaning a lot of the people in our value chain are going to be squeezed, especially if you can now produce a TV ad with an iPhone, because ultimately what you want to do is to engage and talk to consumers. So this context that we are in requires us to rethink and relook at a whole lot of processes that we have had, as well as revisiting our mindset around what is it that we want to do to make sure that we are sustainable together.
Gareth, do you want to go ahead, and then I have a comment after Gareth that I need to post to Tabang?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, everyone said quite a bit, but I mean, I do think it's really, that's what I think I mentioned. How do you align around common interests? Because, you know, with Kenzie, there was a very, very common interest to get a campaign out to market as quickly as possible. And I mean, I think the way of working changed. It was flat. The whole structure was flat, and there was a lot more collaboration. There was a lot more creative thinking of how do we solve production budgets, and we actually worked very well together. I know it wasn't an easy process, Kenzie. I know there was a bit of pain, definitely, but we made it happen. You know, it's something that we would have said was impossible 2-3 months ago, and we made it happen. We did another campaign for another big client of ours, where actually when the client gave us the brief, I thought the brief was impossible. And then I thought when he said to us, listen, this needs to be it needs to be in the market in 4 days' time, I thought that was impossible. And it was achieved. And I mean, that campaign actually trended and is actually having a major impact in the market. And that, you know, so I think we're finding ways to achieve the impossible. And it sounds a little bit cliche, but that's what I'm saying. It depends on what you really, really want as a partnership. And that's come up today. So it is possible, and we're proving it in this crisis. And I think we have to take these learnings going forward and just make our business better, more agile, all those things. And it's going to be tough, just like managing the crisis is going to be tough, but you can do it if you really want to.
Yeah, can I actually just, before the comment that is going to Tabang, so it's important to understand that I'm not sitting here saying all of a sudden I want 500,000 Rand ads that come out in 3 days, and that's, you know, how our marketing is going to look, right? What I am saying is this crisis has proven that we can do things quickly, differently. So it's proven that. For me, it's how do we take that and make it a lot more long-term, and how we operate, but in a way that is sustainable for absolutely the agencies, but also we get great creative for our brand, because that's important to us, to have great work out there. We definitely don't want to shirk on that. And maybe just the last thing, when we talk about the value chain, because, you know, we've also, from a media perspective, which I don't think has necessarily come up, we actually also made a commitment to local media owners to say, here's, you know, how much we're going to spend with you guys for the year, even in the context of our budgets being cut, with the clear understanding, obviously, that there's an impact even from that perspective on a value, you know, on value chain, but it's not going to be as high as what we spent last year. I mean, that's just because of the reality of where we are. But I think as marketeers, if we have the opportunity to ensure that the value chain of creativity is sustained, then we should absolutely take it on, because that's also how our brands come to life.
Mate, just there's been a couple of comments, Kensani. We need to clone you and set you into the industry so that you can preach and spread this message of love.
The good news.
The good news of procurement and marketing working together. And in my mind, probably a topic for a future dialogue as a separate topic.
Yeah.
So, you know, great stuff coming from this. There's quite a couple of comments around that. Over to you, Mate.
Okay, and then Carlo Murson. I disagree with my brother Tabang. Agility is based on how deep the understanding of process delivery and the craft extends to deliver to clients' needs. That was just a comment. Tabang, I don't know if you want to pick it up.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer it very, very quickly. There's a difference between agility and the agile method of working. And so when we were talking about it earlier, I mixed it up. So apologies, Carlo, you're correct. Agility is about moving in an adaptable way. And I think flexible and adaptable was what Sataba said earlier. And I think that's exactly what agility means. Being agile, and the agile methodology is a way of working. and it has values and principles that you follow, and they're very, very specific to how you get to the end product and hopefully end well in it. But it's a mindset as well as a software development methodology that's now being deployed in business because of the great opportunities that it provides and the openness and collaboration that comes with it. So yes, he is correct. Agility is not being agile, but agile is also not being about agility.
Okay. Comments?
Yeah, we've got another one here. Thanks, Tawang. There's a general question here for the panel. And the question simply says, all told for the consumer, things are unfolding quickly. Please ask the panel their thoughts on the importance of tracking the experiences, perceptions, and behaviors of South Africans as they grapple COVID-19. Who'd like to take that one? Brenda.
I think it's absolutely critical. Not all clients can afford to manage their own tracking studies, and particularly in this current financial situation, I think even fewer companies can afford their own tracking studies. But there are two studies, as far as I'm aware. The one that's definitely worth following is the McKinsey one, where I found some data. The other is Kantar, which is doing regular dipsticks to check what's actually happening. Both of those are really worth following. But I do also just want to mention that the Marketing Research Foundation was actually planning to go into market with the media and product survey maps before the lockdown, and the lockdown interrupted the start of the field work. They're now looking at different methods to try and implement this either online or telephonic to avoid the face-to-face requirement. But that map study is going to be absolutely critical because it's going to follow exactly what is happening in terms of media consumption and cross-media consumption, which will help marketers as well as the media agencies. It's going to track product category consumption and brand consumption, so that we'll be able to see exactly how things are changing. It's also going to track shopping habits to see how shopping habits are changing, as well as having some lifestyle questions. So that will go into field. We're busy with pilots right now with a research agency to see if we have the confidence in the methodology to press go buttons. But if there are any marketing organizations out there who have not yet subscribed to MAPS, I would really encourage it. It's going to be one of the most critical studies. It's got a sample panel of 20,000 people reaching into all pockets of society. So it's going to be an absolutely indispensable piece of tracking research to measure how consumers are actually changing behavior as we move through COVID.
Just to add to what Brenda is saying, there's also a smaller research agency, which is very much, it operates and it's more in the anthropology kind of research, which is observing consumer behavior, especially in the township, because also that's the market that we tend to ignore. And they've been given the license and they're operating at the moment, and literally on a week-by-week basis, they're issuing out their observations and where things are changing, because the biggest part of the biggest dilemma with what is happening is everything is fluid. Therefore, what was inculcated behavior last week is new behavior this week. And those are the observations that they're sharing, and it helps marketers at the moment to really rejig and pivot their strategies as things change.
What is it?
To that, I think as brands, we've had our own tracking studies. But I think what's been fascinating for me in banking is you would absolutely have expected consumers to, in droves, move to digital banking. And we haven't seen that shift as significantly as we assumed we would see it. So I do think in a number of ways, we need to understand that some of these changes that are going to happen now are not necessarily going to stick. So, you know, the whole thing of continuing to just understand the habits through the crisis and after the crisis is going to be quite important, because you can make the wrong decisions thinking, you know, this is now a long-term trend, or, you know, whatever it is. But it also shows us, I think, as a bank, obviously most banks are digitalizing, that the you know, consumers still want to walk into a branch. So that's been quite fascinating for us, because we really didn't expect that. But it does help some of our long-term thinking around what we do from a digital and branch perspective.
Thank you, guys. I think we've had quite an intense discussion on the ways of work and what the ways of work are going to look like for us in the future. I just would, myself and Brian would just like to touch on a pertinent issue that has been spoken for years and years in this industry, but in terms of, and I know myself and Bonnie have had this conversation numerous times, in terms of transformation. Where are the black females, senior females in this industry? What are we doing about it? And how are we, yes, one of you, two of you, where are the many black females in this industry? What do we see transformation looking like in light of the situation that we're in? Is this industry ever going to look a bit different?
And I think related to that, you know, quite a lot of the questions coming in there, Mate, are also about, you know, small versus big, whether agencies or companies. And within there, for me, I think there's also a conversation around transformation to be had. So I don't know who in the on the panel
would like to tackle that issue.
Yeah.
I mean, I can maybe jump in. It's obviously it's a difficult topic, but and the problem is, it's, you know, we went on a journey quite some time ago in terms of wanting to transform the agency. So, you know, we've had leaders in our business for over a decade that are now in senior executive positions, and female as well. So the problem is to try and fix the problem now in the middle of the crisis. It seems quite knee-jerk, and I'm not really giving the answer you want to hear, but I do think it needs to be a strategy that is long-term. It needs to be considered across the business. I mean, we're doing well in certain areas of our organization, not that well in others, but I think it has to be a concerted, intentional effort. It has to be a long-term strategy. It has to be done for the right reason. It needs to be aligned back to your business purpose. And I think you also need to put a lot of training and skill development in. I mean, we've actually had to create our own internal, we call it School of Growth, to actually really support and upskill people, because there hasn't been enough of it within the industry. And those are some of the, I mean, I can just share some of the things we've done, and I think we've made progress, and I think we are more balanced in how we operate our business, and we've got some, you know, we've got some really good wins. But I think that my answer is it has to be a long-term strategy that has to be considered and worked at almost on a daily basis. And actually, we're starting to bring a lot of measurement into our processes, because it's a really also a cliche, but if you don't measure it, you also can't manage it and improve it. So I think there needs to be a lot of tracking to see where the progress is. It's a massive strategy in its own right to get right. It's not just a quick fix. And that's the only the only experience I can share with you in terms of what we're trying to do within our organization. And there's still lots of work to be done, but that's what we've done.
I was going to say, I think we all have to remember transformation is not a destination, it's a journey. And as Gareth said, it takes a long time, and it's about investment and commitment more than anything, because where the investment comes in, it's in time. And we are up against a generation that wants immediate returns. So what we're beginning to see across the board, Mate, you are testament to this. You started in this sector, moved around, etc. And often people just feel like they're not rewarded immediately. So as part of us forming a new pact of working between client and agency, I'm yearning for the days that we used to have, days gone by, where as a young person starting in the sector, you were given an opportunity to spend 6 months at client. And then you begin to learn the ropes of marketing and understand the language. And that's why when you come back to agency, you're a stronger person. and vice versa. We've stopped doing that. And for me, I think as part of us forging a new pact going forward is how do we transform every part and every piece of this relationship, from the contract, as I said, right up to ways of working, and also right up to evaluating each other. And then how do we also improve our people? Tabang spoke about the juniorization of the marketing team. I think it's also important for me as a communicator to upskill my marketing clients and vice versa on the other side. Because when we begin to do that, we then become a stronger force, and I think the boardroom will respect us better. So that the market quickly come and ask us to cut budget because they can see the value we bring to the business. I think at this moment we've become, as a sector, we've become very reactive, and this is whilst doing the jobs that we have to do on a day-to-day basis.
I wonder, Mate, my sense is that marketing side, I think it's senior marketeers especially are actually quite transformed, to be honest. I don't know, like that's the sense I get. I actually think the problem is more in the agency side, to be honest.
No, it is. I agree with you. Kenzie, I agree with you. Marketing is very transformed, even at a senior level.
I think, but Brenda, you know, it's small things like maternity leave. Because our margins are so tight, okay, we don't get to give our people the same maternity leave that they need and the hours that they need as young mothers, etc. So for me, that's why we need this conversation. Share your learnings with me, and let's find a collaborative way of making it work. Marta and I have this conversation all the time where I keep going, I don't want to sit on this board again because am I the only woman who can really sit on the ACA board? Let's find younger ones and let's bring people in. And let's make it a concerted effort across the board. And also, I don't think it's just females. At this stage, we're even losing the young creatives. Yeah. They don't stay, they're going to the production side. So there's more that really needs to be done across the board.
If I may, so the first thing I'd like to say to Brenda and Kensani is our sample of two. I think we need to do some proper analysis of the data across the board to generally get to whether the numbers are correct, but I don't think it means transformation has truly been done. I'd rather talk to diversity and inclusion. Are those women voices being heard? Are they being respected in the workplace? Are they being actually given opportunities to then continue to grow other people within their environments? I think that is quite limited. So I think transformation is broader than just I see a few black faces and they happen to have be wearing dresses, for example. My concern really is in diversity and inclusion as a mindset and as an approach. I think we need a lot more work as a collective to do true as diversity and inclusion, because that will improve our creative product. That will improve our ability. Oh wow, that is love right there. That is fantastic. By the way, that was Kinsani's partner giving her a kiss, obviously to say goodbye, or either to say this guy's comment was so horrible you need a kiss to feel better. Either way, that was a beautiful thing. I just want to recognize that, and then to be able to say, I think that what comes down to the ultimate version of our industry is how we can truly get to the consumer in a genuine way and an authentic and in a way that says, we truly understand who you are. We get you so well that this brand and you, we talk to each other. And the only way to do that is for us to open up our minds to other people, other points of view. And that's difficult, and that's more challenging than ever before. And what's funny is that we find ourselves in this challenge as an industry with marketers and agency in conflict often, either financially or sometimes even in the work. what's interesting is that both of us really want the same thing, which is to connect to our consumer and to truly get to them in a way that's authentic and tells the story of who we are. And so it doesn't make sense that we're at odds with each other often. And that, I think that transformation, and I think, I can't remember who said it earlier, is more than just, having that transformed our business in terms of racial, gender dynamics or demographics. It is about a true understanding of each other across the board. I just want to end with my head of strategy and data and insights is a guy called Antonio Petra. He talks about alignment as being both about what you know and about how you think. And what's really interesting is we often, get into a room, we say it's an alignment session and dump all this information. And then what we don't do is we don't get to how we think. We don't align on how we think. And I think that's what's missing in our approach to this. I hope that we can align across all of these conversations in the way that we think, so that when we really go to, we get to the future, this uncertain future, we're able to approach it in a truly collaborative and aligned way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tabang. Just a comment, Heidi Bauer. Brower,
yeah.
not Bauer. Brower. Love that, Boniswa. Would happily have agency newbies spend time with us at the brand. What a great idea.
Thank you.
And then there's another quite opposing by Angelo Tandy. I totally disagree. There are people that have been in the industry for many years with great skill and have not been afforded the opportunities. Large agencies are happy with control and the status. Okay. Any comments? Quiet,
I guess for me, then I can make
Okay,
a comment
Chaba?
and say, I just hope that we can take inspiration from young people who have led revolutions and did not ask for anybody's permission. They were able to see that which was the status quo was not working for them, and they did something about it.
Okay.
Would you like to expand on that, Sachawa? Because there's quite a lot of that coming through the comments
Yeah.
about small agencies not having access or a seat at the table. I mean,
And not being financially enabled.
yes, and empowered.
Yeah.
Okay. It starts with a mindset, as we said earlier, to say if you come and have a mindset of entitlement at one hand, a mindset that somebody must do something for you, must hand you over, must mentor you, must do all those other things, and you have not done the inner work yourself to say, what's my purpose and what's my contribution? It becomes much easier in that sense when then you engage anybody, whether they are big or small, to say, I'm passionate about the craft and the work that I want to do. Here are the things that I'm looking to you to enable so that I can be merry on my way. And if that person is not able to enable it, to move on to the next one. When I say don't ask for permission to somebody to basically transform, you know that an agency or a marketing person is somebody that sits between you and connecting with the consumer in terms of your ability to communicate and really create creative work that is worthy of remarking about, that is remarkable. Find other channels to get your work across and it will be noticed. When I was the marketing director, I used to look at good work and say, who are the people behind that work? I want to meet them. I want to work with them, regardless of which agencies they came through. So when people are able to break through in terms of what they have to bring to the table themselves, their work is able to open those opportunities to them. And for people that are led and aware, they will basically be able to see them. In a nutshell, I'm saying there's an element of somebody must enable, but to a large extent, individuals have to do the heavy lifting themselves. A river never says, I've met a rock. It goes around the rock and it continues to cut its way to its destination. And I think it's a mental attitude that we need to also build in. This crisis has actually proven once again that we have to dig deeper as human beings because we have something that's so deep in us that's yearning to express, and we need that to come through. That's why I'm saying sometimes you don't need permission, but you need to basically find a way.
Just the last one
Can I
from
in? I'm not sure if it's my turn.
Well, we've got 10 more minutes, so I'm going to give you a 30-second wrap-up each. So go ahead, Gareth. I'll allow you because people want to hear from you.
Just very quickly. I mean, I think you've got to look at those big agencies. What are their intentions? If the intentions are to do really great work, which, to be honest, I think we need to spend more time on that because that's what we do. Then they should be looking for inclusivity and diversity in their team, because how do you do, and I mentioned it earlier, how do you do great work in this market if you don't have a diverse, authentically transformed team? You cannot do it. So, where will those big agencies be in the long term? I question it. What is their real, as I said, what is their true north? What are they trying to do for their clients? So I think that should be a lot of organization, and let's see where those guys are long term if they aren't embracing transformation, because I don't think they're going to be around in 10 years' time if they don't get it right. And that's where it should all be about. What are we doing in terms of delivering on great work for our clients? What do we need to do that, and how do we actually go about that? And as I said earlier, we should be more representative of the demographic of our industry, both in terms of race, in terms of sex, and that's what should drive the intent at the end of the day. And that's my only comment. And as I say, we've got room to improve. I'm not claiming we've got it all right, but that's what should be driving it.
I just want to do a point of order very quickly. Sorry, point of order. I don't think it's about big agencies. You are one of them, Gareth. I think it's about all agencies. Just a point of order.
Correct. Agreed.
By Brandon Govender. He says transformation needs to be demanded by clients. If that doesn't happen, then there's no incentive for the agencies to transform. That's a fact. Okay. If there's any commentary, you're welcome to comment, but yeah.
Very quickly, can we also demand that the client be transformed as well? Because I've got a lot of clients who demand transformation, but then don't do it themselves. And I find it deeply hypocritical if that's the case. So I think we should all be putting the hat on and going, we are doing it, therefore you should do it, and vice versa. That's a statement.
Thank you.
Perfect. Was there a quick one from someone?
Is there anybody else who wants to conclude on this issue? And then we're going to give you guys each 30 seconds to wrap up.
So from a transformation, I still make my point that if you are looking to the high priest to give an instruction, do A, B, C, D, it's not a sustainable way. You still need to make sure that we serve what is at the center, which is our common purpose, our agenda, the brand. And in that process is making sure that we have the right mindset, we have the right people in and around the table. The work will show. If the people around the table are not transformed, then the client and the agents will need to have a very honest relationship to say, how come the work that we're producing is not connecting with the people? Simply because the people around the table are not able to produce work that connects. The one where you have work that just a flame where it just connects, but it wasn't produced by the right people. It's not sustainable. Good work over time is really produced by diverse in thinking, in approach, in everything, teams around the table. As long as everybody shows up as themselves in their diversity, we're going to go somewhere.
Thank you. I think it's time to wrap up, and we'd like to say thank you to all of you guys who are part of our panel, but we're going to give you a 30-second wrap-up. We'll start with you, Thabang.
While I was making my notes, thank you. That's fine. I'm just going to say, which is a quote by Martin Luther King. The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands at times of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in times of challenge and controversy. I think this is that time where we're being faced with real challenge and real controversy, and we're learning every day as we go along. The only thing I can say is that the world isn't fair. Michelle Obama says that. Go next little bit of punt there. Michelle Obama says that in her book Becoming, and she says it in her Netflix series, and she says the world is not fair, and if you sit down and wait for the world to be fair in order for you to participate, it will have passed you by. So I look out to everybody out there, and I get it. There's a lot of unfairness out there, and there's a lot of challenge, but it really does take those who are willing to just work harder and do more that can get us and make us successful. So to the individuals and to the companies out there, small, big, marketers and agencies alike, understand that this is our time that where we will be measured to show up in the most human, authentic, and ingenious ways. So if we do it right, we'll have better stories to tell in the future, stories of sacrifice, challenge, character, and camaraderie. So this is the moment to give us a chance to look with new eyes and to consider whether we're positively contributing to a distressed society or laying further burdens upon it. Let's not do that. Sure, let's count it.
Thank you, Thabang. But please note, everybody, that was not 30 seconds, but thank you, Thabang.
You didn't let me finish my notes, so I had to ad lib.
Chaba, we'll give you a chance to say something in the wrap-up. 30-second wrap-ups, Chaba.
Oh, thank you. I think what has come through in our conversation is we need to be very clear around why we work together and why we work together. I said why we work together and why we should see our destination together. We are in the purpose of our coming together is to build brands, because we do really believe that brands in the end are the differentiators, are the ones that allow us to build equity around our businesses. I think our success can only come through if you have a success mindset. I want to finish with a quote from Jim Rohn that says, "Success is like an ocean. It's not in short supply. The problem is some people go to the ocean with a teaspoon." I hope as a collective we are not going to the ocean with a teaspoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bonnie?
Thanks for the opportunity. I think for me, the biggest thing is we should applaud ourselves for actually having the guts and the courage to actually come to this table, all of us, and have this honest and authentic conversation. If I've had anything for me today, is the honesty and the naivety of how we came to this table with one mindset of making it better and fixing our relationship and making our relationship stronger. So with that, I would like to say to everyone, even those that are listening to this conversation, this is the beginning of a bigger conversation, and let us make sure that it doesn't stop and end here today, but it begins to transform who we are, how we think, and how we engage and work with one another. Because as Sichaba said, at the end of the day, these businesses that we all work for, they thrive from one thing, these brands that we build. So we do a very important job. And together as this marketing and comms team, we are that coin or that thing that actually drives that process within the business. So yes, thank you for the respect and the moment and the time from everybody. I've really thoroughly enjoyed, and I've grown immensely from just this conversation. Imagine if we did this much more often with the respect and the dignity we've given each other right now.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you, Bonnie.
Brenda, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, just thanks to my panel colleagues and to you guys as MCs. It's been a great conversation. Thanks to all the listeners. I really just want to say that there's been so much good points that have been made, so many positive things said, so many great ideas. But I just want to emphasize that future-proofing is now.
Yes.
It's not sometime long in the future. We don't have that time anymore. So I just plead for saying all these great ideas, all these things we want to do, let's future-proof now for a great future.
Thank you, Brenda.
Fantastic.
Gareth, do you want to take over?
I think, it's just amazing to see how we're talking more honestly to our clients and someone else says more honestly, more authentically. And I think with even something like transformation, if you listen more and you're more authentic with other people's challenges, and you understand where they're coming from and where we're coming from, be it clients, be it agencies, and you actually make a real authentic effort to fix things, it's amazing to see what you can achieve. And that's why I said I've seen some amazing things happen in the last couple of weeks. So the hope is that we continue to be this authentic, this honest, and we just have mutual aligned interest to really make things better for all of us, as I said up front. And that's what I mean. I think everyone feels that way in the station today. There seems to be a high level of honesty, and also we don't have all the answers. But if you work on it together, we can change things and make them better in the future. And that's what I want to say. So thanks to everybody for the input. I also really appreciated it. Thanks.
Thanks for your time, Gareth.
Kenzie, do you want to wrap it up for us? Thank you, Gareth.
Yeah, thanks. I think firstly, this has really been a great conversation. And for me personally, I think some of the things that, especially the agencies have said have challenged me. So, and I think that's always good because, I have to reflect on, some of the things we do as a brand and how we work with our agency. So that's been important. But I think to end off, here's the thing. How we're going to survive in this thing is going to be based on partnerships between agencies and marketeers. It's that simple. So whether it's agile ways of working, whether it's looking at how, how much we spend on advertising, how much we spend on agencies, that cannot be conversations that are being done in isolation of the two. It has to be marketeers and advertisers and agencies having these conversations and resolving it for the long term, for the future of the industry, as well as for the relevance of our brands, to be honest, and how our brands land in the market. So for me, I haven't had this type of conversation actually in the past, and I'm hoping that this is a start of something that both MASA and ACA continue to drive.
Thank you, Kenzie, and thank you to our audiences, and thank you to Brian.
Thank you, Mate.
Yes.
Thank you,
guys. Thank you, panel. We've had a great conversation this morning. It's not the last conversation we're going to have. We're going to have more conversations, and we are going to allow access for more people to sit on the panel and give us their opinions. The opinions just does not sit with the big brands or the big agencies. It's all of us having a conversation in order to allow access and opportunity and transformation in our industry. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam. Before we go, thank you very much
and thank you to Multimedia.
To Multimedia, our technical partners. This is the first time we're doing this.
Yes.
And I think we pulled it off. Obviously, there'll be a lot of learnings that we shall incorporate into the next ones. But Multimedia, thank you very much.
Thank you. You guys were superstars. Thank you.
And thank you very much to everyone else who worked in the background to make this happen. Panel, once again, thank you very much. Audience, thank you very much. Quite a lot of comments and interactive conversations. So we thank you very much, and we'll make sure that we do this soon again.
Yes.
Thank you.
Au revoir.
Until next time.
Yes.
Thank
you very much, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Everyone, stay safe.
Bye.
All right, then.
Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Stay safe.
Yeah, thank you. Stay
safe.
All of you.
Social
Thank
distance.
you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Well done. Thank
Cheers,
Thank
then.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.